Hello everyone, it is me Sasha Cat, and today's video is a coloring tutorial. You guys have been asking me to make a new tutorial video for a while. I do have a few coloring tutorials available showing my full coloring process, but today I wanted to make one showing you guys a simpler way to color your drawings. So if you want really great looking art but you aren't interested in doing a lot of shading, please stick around and follow along with this video. The line art I'll be using in this video is available for you to download for free on my Ko-fi shop. The link to that is in the description below, so feel free to pause this video, download the image, and use it to follow along if you're interested in learning. Speaking of learning, let's get into this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Recently, I've been interested in learning how to make illustrations in different art programs I don't usually use, such as Procreate or Clip Studio Paint. Luckily, I was immediately able to find classes on creating art in both these programs on Skillshare. The class I'm most interested in is It's Honeybee's class on anime stylized portraits in Clip Studio Paint, mostly because their aesthetic and style reminds me of my own, and their class looks very informative. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and much more. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. Whether it's blogging, drawing, or logo designs, all these classes and more are available on Skillshare. Skillshare also has seasonal updates with added features and improvement, such as the ability to find the class you're interested in by software and material. So if you're specifically looking for a Procreate or Photoshop class, it'll be much easier for you to find it. They have so many great classes available, and the best part is the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So be sure to check the description for that link and get started. So jumping right into the tutorial, the first thing you're going to do is create a layer right below your line art layer. Then you're going to use your magic wand and select the outer layer of your canvas. And using the second tool in the upper right corner of IBISPAINT, you're going to select invert. And then you're going to fill in that selected area with your base color. The next step is to create a layer right above your base color layer. And you're going to rename that layer flat color. So this is where you're going to put all your flat colors, of course. On the layer section, you can see two tools below, an arrow pointing down and a lock with an A on it. So that's the clip-in tool and the alpha lock tool. We're going to click on the clip-in tool and clip our flat color layer to our base color layer. And that allows us to stick with only coloring on the base color layer. And this just makes it easier for you to add your coloring. Here you can see that I'm playing around with the color of her hair, and I do that by clicking on filter and going to where it says change color and just playing around with the colors because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted her hair to be. I spent a lot of time just messing around with the colors and figuring out what the color scheme of this drawing is going to be. For this drawing, I was thinking of doing like more earth tone colors, more natural colors. So it's a lot of brown and orange and green. We're currently in fall, so I figure it fits. When you're doing the coloring section of your art, make sure that you fill in any little areas that aren't filled in. Sometimes it's hard to notice, but there'll be areas where there's like color missing, specifically in the line art, and it's important to fill those in so your drawing can look good. You can see me going in and adjusting some details on the line art, but don't worry, when you download the line art, it'll be perfectly cleaned up. So like there was a section on her bag on the line art that wasn't drawn correctly, but your line art will be fine, so don't worry about it. I really like the color palette that I currently have, but I do end up changing this later. So don't feel too obligated to follow the exact color scheme that I'm using. You can give her a different skin tone if you want, a different hair color. You can color her any way you like. It doesn't really matter too much. But if you want to follow along, you can. But just know that I don't actually end up sticking with this color palette. I do change it later on. I had a lot of fun coming up with this design though for this character. I really wanted to draw a girl who had bees in her hair as like clips, as hair clips, and that's really all I thought of, and then everything else came later, but I do like how the drawing turned out. So here you can see that I changed the colors completely. I think I changed the hue and then it gave me this brighter color. I changed the hue and the brightness, and then I got a pattern that, you know, was a lot brighter, a lot lighter, and I kind of liked it more, and I thought it worked more. But then I ended up going in and adding back some darker colors, so you can see that I made her boots darker. But yeah, this is the final color palette that I ended up going with. So if you guys want to change yours as well, you can. But as I said, you guys don't have to follow the coloring completely. Just know that we're currently on the layer where we're filling in our flat colors. At the moment, that's all you need to worry about. Now that we have our flat colors filled in, we're going to change the color of our line art. So click on your line art layer, click on filter, then you need to select adjust color and then change drawing color. So the next step in order to make our line art more interesting is we're going to turn on alpha lock, and this allows us to change the color of our line art specifically. And then I'm going to select a lighter red type color. You can see the color that I select on the screen. And I'm going to color specifically where her skin tone is. Those are the specific sections of the line art where I'm going to change the color. Again, we're doing this to make our line art look more interesting, more visually appealing. If you're unsure of the color that you want to use during this section, you don't have to use the alpha lock method. You can create a layer right above the line art layer, and using the clip and mask tool, clip it to that line art layer and you can color on that layer instead. That way you can go back and play around with the colors if you want more easily. So now you can see me going through and just coloring the line art specifically inside where her skin tone is. And this might just be like a very small thing, but I do think it helps to make the drawing look more interesting, in my opinion. The thing with coloring like this is that we're trying to make other aspects of our drawing look really cool to make up for the fact that we're not going to be doing any extensive shading. So doing stuff like playing around with the colors of the line art really helps with that. The next step is to create a layer right above our base color layer, and this is going to be our blush layer. So for this step, we're just going to take a red color and use an airbrush, and we're going to use that to softly fill in certain areas like on her cheeks, on her nose, her fingertips, and yeah, we're just gonna fill that in, and then we're gonna lower the opacity of that layer. You can also make that a multiply layer, but you don't necessarily have to. Usually for darker skin tones, I make it a multiply layer, but it depends on how you're coloring your character. To do that, just click on where it says normal and change that to multiply. Next, we're going to add a shadow layer right above our flat color layer. Don't worry, we're not going to do any extensive shading. I promise we wouldn't be doing that. We're just going to add shading to specific areas on her skin, so where her skin is. So under her neck, her ears, her eyes. We're also gonna add some to like her hair, specifically like the back of her hair, if that makes sense. So specific areas that you think shadows might be, we're gonna add some shadows there, and those are gonna be your key areas, but we're not gonna touch anywhere else. Next, I'm using an airbrush to add some additional shadow to the underside of her hair. In order to make this easier, you can see that I used the magic wand to select the inside of her hair in that section. It depends, you don't necessarily have to do this, but you can do this to make adding the shading a little bit more easier. After you're finished adding the shadows, you can lower the opacity. Next, we're going to add a layer right above that layer, which is going to be our highlight layer. For each layer that you create above your base layer, ensure that you're clipping that layer to the layer below it. This just helps with your coloring process to stay within the line art. We're going to use a white color and we're going to change that layer to an add layer. So like I said, click on where you see it says normal on your layers and change that to add. And we're just going to go in and fill in our highlights. You can follow along with what I'm doing on the screen. As you can see, I just stick to the edge of my drawing. It's hard to explain my process here, so just follow along as best as you can to what I'm doing. After you finish adding the highlights, again, lower the opacity on that layer. And believe it or not, we're basically done. We're done with this drawing. We've successfully completed a simple color drawing. But if you want to make it even more interesting, you can add in a layer above that layer, an additional highlight layer. Then you're going to make that an overlay layer, and you're going to lower the opacity to like 9%. The next step would be to click on Filter, Draw, and then click on Parallel Gradation. And then you're going to create a gradation that's a very dark purple at the bottom of the drawing, and then a light pink for the top. And this is a quick way to add some more shadows and highlights. Honestly, you don't need to do this. It's barely even noticeable. You can see me playing around with the opacity as well. I think I turned it up to like 14, but just make sure to keep that very, very low on the opacity for that layer. And then I'm doing some additional shading. I'm adding a layer right above that layer, and of course clipping it to the layer below it. And I'm using a soft airbrush to add some more highlights. So this is going to be another overlay layer, and I'm just gonna add some color to her hair and just to the edge of the drawing, the top of the drawing specifically. You can make this an overlay layer or an add layer. It doesn't really matter too much. This is just additional coloring stuff. And then you're basically done. You can see me going in and doing a background for this drawing, but you're basically done with the coloring, and that's it. I think this drawing turned out pretty well. I really like how it looks. For the background, I did a very simple background. It's a flat color and some sparkles. But I think it looks interesting, it looks very cool, and I hope you guys were able to follow along successfully with this tutorial. I hope you learned something today. So yeah, that is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching this video. If you like my art and you'd like to show your support, you can always donate to my Ko-fi account or become a channel member. The link to that is always in the description below. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!